Well, welcome Northeast Missouri Angler. I'm Dennis, and this little video here, I haven't posted one for a while because we've had snow and we had a bunch of ice happen last night, so I haven't been on the water. The lake's been froze up. But I had a customer, DH Customs, ask about setup for crappie fishing on Mark Twain. Said he bass fish. I guess he don't do any crappie fishing, so we'll make this just go through a couple different setups that I use this time of year through spring. I fish over live scope, so I single pole mostly. I have Garmin Panoplex live scope, and with that I like using a longer rod. The rod I primarily use for that is it's an H&H War Pig from H&H. It's a 13.5 foot rod. It's lightweight for 13.5 foot, and but the 13.5 foot, it gets it to where you're sitting there single poling over live scope. It hangs it out in front of the boat far enough you don't have to worry about getting tangled up in the trolling motor and whatnot. And on that I use a spinning reel. There are other reels of course you can use. Crappie fishing, just like any other kind of fishing, it can be cheap or expensive depending on what quality of stuff you want. The H&H War Pig is it's a pretty pricey rod, but you get what you pay for on these rods, on these long crappie rods. Another one that I have a couple of these right here. It's a B&M West Point. It's your cheaper rod. This one's a 10 footer. I've also got a 12 foot. They're a cheaper rod. They run around $29. I have the same reel, just a cheap spinning reel, smaller spinning. Most of them you pick up for around 20 bucks for a spinning rod. The other option, as far as rods, for single pole, that's what I prefer, is a long rod. I don't use very many 6 foot to 7 foot. I've got a couple 8-footers for casting, like in the spring, cast and reel back in. I like a longer rod. But as far as rods go, as far as reels go, I use small spinning setups. It varies. I just buy whatever's a cheap one. I mean, you're catching crappie, you're not catching, monster fish all the time. So, but they work great. Another option is, especially if you got a new angler in the boat and somebody that's not used to using long rods, the biggest thing when you're using them long rods is when you do catch one, don't reel it up and it's all whipped to the tip of the rod. I see that a lot. Keep your rod tip up, and as soon as the crappie hits the top of the water, you just kind of swing him in unless he's big enough you need a net. One thing that'll help with that is they're called Bano reels, and this one here is made by B&M. A lot of times you can buy the B&M setup with the West Point that comes with these on there, and you pull the line out. That's what you do. You pull out however much line you want, and you hold onto the line in one hand, and the rod would be in this hand, and you hang on your line in this hand, is what you do. And the break, you just pull the line in or let line drop accordingly. You don't cast with these Bano reels. And then whenever you catch a fish, you just hang on the line, lift him up, set him in the boat, and then bend down and take him off. If you do get a fish on there, it does have a little reel on the side of it, and you can reel your line in just like on any other rod. But the thing about it is it doesn't have a drag. The drag is you, and you got to hang on to the line when you set the hook. But that's really the only two reels I use. Line preference, Mark Twain is normally stained water, so you can get by with braids a lot better than you can some other lakes. This fall especially, I noticed normally I use the 20-pound Snipping Brade. Any braid works. I use a Snipping Brade just because it shows up you can actually see the line on the live scope. Sometimes you can see the line but not your jig. It just makes it easier to figure out where you're at. But you can use any braid. I prefer 20-pound braid. That's big enough to where if you get hooked up on a stump or a log, a lot of times you can pull it out without breaking your line. I very rarely lose jigs, hooks when I'm crappie fishing, just for the fact is I'm in a boat. I can move around. And one thing I noticed too, don't be scared to reel down to your tip touches where it's hung up and push it off with the tip and then pull it out of the water rather than just sit there and pull on the line. But like this fall, Mark Twain's been so low, we haven't had a lot of rain. The lake looked really good, had a lot of clear water. So in that instance, I use a 10-pound. This is the Crappie Max line from Bass Pro. I use that a lot. I have it in 10-pound and 6-pound both, but I mainly use the 10-pound. That's what I have on this one. What I've been using this fall is the Crappie Max line. I like it. I don't have any problems with it breaking prematurely or at the knots or anything. To where like this one, this rod, I have the Snipping Brade on it. So I usually take one or two rods, usually take 2 or 3 crappie rods out, even though I single pole. And mainly just because I'll tie different things on each one. Maybe a different color jig head, different size. One with braid, one without braid, etc. So I'm not constantly tying stuff. I can just pick one up and change that way. When I change, I'll change both of them if I need to make a big change, if nothing's working. But as far as what I use on the end of that line, I mainly use plastics. I will use minnows in pretty much summer and fall bite, but usually about October through April, I'm primarily using jigs if I'm crappie fishing. Plastics. I do have some hair jigs from Thumper Jigs, but I don't use a lot of them. It seems like to me, Mark Twain plastics works just as good as hair jigs. I don't use large plastic or large hair jigs. I don't use anything 2 inches. Everything I use is 1 3/4 to 1 inch, depending on time of year. I don't think the crappie on Mark Twain like a bigger jig. It's just my opinion there. I know guys that use 2-inch stuff and they do just fine with it. I don't like that big a jig. I don't think they like it as well. There again, match your hatch, or at times you just have to fish what's working. Sometimes what's working, you know, might be something that there isn't that color in the water per se. At least it doesn't appear to be that color to us, but under the water it maybe does to them. Some of the colors I use and some of the different size baits that I use this time of year right now when this ice comes off, and I've been using it when the water gets under about 40 degrees, I switch to a very small bait, about a 1 inch. And these are the 3 primary colors that I use no matter what time of year it is. These are the colors pretty much that I use throughout the year. I just switch back and forth. There's a couple other ones, but for the most part, these are the colors. And that bait, when that water's cold and it's under 40, it's called the Wacky Wiggler from Wild Willey's OCD. I've been using these baits now for this will be the 2nd year for this wiggler that he's had it out, and they catch fish. It's unbelievable how quickly that this bait has taken over Mark Twain in the winter when it gets cold. But the colors I use primarily on that, again, is minnow. It's a black and gold glittered bait. It's kind of a snowflake color. It's called white ice. And then the other one is the black and blue. And these are very small baits. They're only 1 inch long. See them there. I mean, they're very, very small. This year, the hottest bait on Mark Twain has been the Wabash design from Wild Willey's. There again, same color, same 3 colors I'm using: the white ice, the minnow, and the beat down black and blue. And there's what the black and blue look like. This is a 1.6 inch bait, just a hair over 1.5 inches. And the tail, if you look, it's kind of like a fluke. If you're familiar with a fluke bait, the only difference is the tail is extremely thin, where a fluke tapers all the way down. And that's a very small bait. You can see my finger, how small that is. I mean, even the diameter is not that big around, and the tail's real thin. And then, of course, the minnow. And I got to get some more white ice. I think I'm out of them, or I put them in a pocket in my boat. But those are the 2 primary styles and the 3 main colors that I use. When the water gets above about 44, 45, I'll start using that Wabash until the water gets up warmer into the 60s and Sometimes a little sooner. I'll switch to the paddle tail, or the willow tail is what I've always called it. Wild Willey's again. I think he calls it Slap Your Mama Willow Tail. This is a spring color. I use a lot during the spring. And that's an 1 3/4 bait. And this is more your standard size crappie bait that you see, that everybody's familiar with, your standard body size. I mean, you can tell the difference between that and this as far as size on these baits. Not alone the style, but just the size. And then these look like dinks compared to anything. And you can get all these baits on Wild Willey's, OCD.com. If you go on their website, place an order. I think you get 20 of the Wacky Wigglers in a package for $4. I think it's either 12 or 15 of the Slap Your Mama Willowtail, and I think it's 12 or 15 of the Wabash, and they're all, I think, $4, $3.50, $4, something like that. If you put in on the, if you do go there and order, you put in on the coupon code NE Angler. It's Northeast Angler, just NE, and then Angler 10. It'll give you 10% off when you order. So there's a savings for you there. And once again, as far as jig hooks, as far as hooks that I use, jig heads, whatnot, I use the Thumper Jig 1/8 ounce or 16th ounce jig head for the Willowtail, the normal size jig head for this Willowtail in the spring and summer, but I'm using a bigger bait. And the rest of the time I'm using the dwarf pillhead in 1/8 or 16 ounce from Thumper Jig. My favorite colors on that are the gold nugget on the jig head and the killer chrome are my two favorite colors as far as jig heads. Now, I'm not saying you won't see me use orange crush or stone as two of the colors. They work really well at times on Mark Twain too, depending on water conditions and what the fish wants. But and you go to vanthumperjigs.com, you can get those if you want to use those, or just use your favorite jig, whatever you got. But that's primarily what I use to catch crappie. I don't do a lot of fancy setups. I mean, I just got a jig tied to the line. This is the this one here is that's the gold nugget in the dwarf pillhead, and they're the regular size jig head is substantially smaller than that, or bigger than that, the standard size one. Let's see what I got on here. This one here is Orange Crush on that one in the dwarf pillhead from Thumper. And these are just, I just grabbed these up out of the boat. They're just rigged from last time I was out. Last video when I was with Kenny, they wanted a little pink, so that's why that one there is on there. That last video I posted, that's what I was using, was that and the white ice one that I showed you right here. That's what I was using in that last video before the storms, before the lake froze up. So, but that's my primary setup as far as what I use rod and reel wise. So I hope that answered your questions, D&H. And anyway, this weather coming in, the weather's going to warm up. I'd say I'll be getting some new fishing videos out here within about a week or so, because it's supposed to be in the 50s next week. So that lake's going to thaw out pretty quick. So, but anyway, thanks for watching. And remember, if you like the content, hit the subscribe button down at the bottom and hit that bell next to the subscribe button to notify you when I post videos. And as always, thanks for watching.